So, capitalism only really works through exploitation and extraction, specifically extraction of resources. So, what happens when there's nothing left to extract? I'm Roy Arthur. This is my unbelievable reality. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and please share. I've talked about this before in previous posts. I'm going to circle back to it time and time again. As I said in my last few posts, I really want to dig into American history, the real American history, desperately. But current events are making that almost impossible to accomplish. So I'm going to stick to some central themes that will tie into our history as a nation in bits and pieces. And hopefully over the course of time, I'll be able to craft a narrative where all of this will fit together and make sense a lot better than it does right now. But what I really want to talk about today is exploitation. Capitalism is the byproduct of colonialism and empire building. That's really how capitalism came about. It started way back in the 1400s in England with the fencing off of open spaces and developing and building what became known as serfs, otherwise known as basically human laborers. See, when your little plot of land where you grew your vegetables and then you had free range access to allow your animals to graze wherever there was food available, it was a communal system. When wealthy landowners began to parcel off that land and restrict access, it changed how the world worked. There's an entire series of podcasts just on that topic alone. I'm not going to go there. But back to what I'm talking about, extraction. When you think about extraction, think about things like water. Think about things like timber. Think about things like coal, natural gas, oil. The obvious ones, fruits, foodstuffs, extractions. A great example is Dole bananas in Honduras and how they built an empire out of extracting produce from the country by exploiting the inhabitants of the country as labor. What's happened in the United States is that we're running out of extraction opportunities. One of the problems with a democratic government system, a supposed democratic governmental system, is that it slows things down. The bureaucracy of how our government functions is a huge vulnerability in the world of AI. Once again, another discussion. But it's also an impediment to extraction because it slows it down. And the truth of the matter is that even though the United States geographically is resource rich, a lot of those resources, capitalism, corporatism, corporations aren't able to access because of the regulations and safeguards that we built into our system to avoid them over extracting. This is a situation that's really pushing to the forefront right now with the massive build out of these data centers all across the United States, but specifically in areas where we're water vulnerable. A great example is there is a new campus, they call it a campus, which just cracks me up, 532 acres. Most people don't have any idea how big an acre is. I'm not going to try to explain it to you. Suffice it to say, it's larger than your plot of land in your suburb in Topeka or wherever the fuck you happen to live. 532 acres outside of Phoenix. The water needed to cool those computers will come out of the groundwater not out of the Colorado River, because the Colorado River simply doesn't have enough water to support it. So we're putting a water intensive industry in a water sensitive area. Building a data center in the desert is fucking idiocy. It's absolute lunacy. It's going to spike electrical costs and reduce water availability for human beings, for things like bathing and drinking. Not to mention all of the other needs we have with groundwater. Our final resource for water is underneath the ground. Anyway, what's happening with those data centers is stressing the extraction capabilities of the locations where they're putting them. And they're putting them anywhere where they can buy massive chunks of land, buy off the local city councils to pass new legislation to allow for those commercial builds in what was previously farmlands. That's what it was. What's the word I'm looking for that is escaping me right now? That's how it was zoned in agriculture. What's happening is OpenAI and Sam Altman and Anthropic, etc., and Microsoft and Facebook or Meta, they're all building these data centers, but first, in order to do it, they go to the city councils or the county councils, and they convince them to rezone the land from agriculture to commercial so they can build these data centers to, once again, exploit. One of the things that's happening, though, with the breakdown of late-stage capitalism is they've now turned their attention to the only real source of revenue left, which is exploiting the population, exploiting us. And how do they do that? Well, think about it. A good example is your favorite Mexican restaurant, and I'm just using this as a metaphor. You used to be able to go through the drive-up window or sit at your table and order as much salsa and chips as you wanted. Now you get one thing of salsa, and if you want more, you have to pay extra for that. Exploitation, in a really brief summary, is what we are now seeing, which is added cost, any source of potential revenue. A great example is streaming. When streaming first came onto the scene, as all things, it always began by being a cheap alternative to cable, which now streaming, thank you Netflix and all Hulu and Paramount and Warner Brothers, etc., streaming has effectively replaced cable television. But if you look closely at your bill, because you have to subscribe to each service, you're paying more now for your television, for your entertainment, than you were before when you had basic cable. But it's happened incrementally in such a slow way that most people aren't even really aware of it. And most people are now paying double what they used to pay for this new service. That's exploitation. Adding an extra tax to cover a city bill, selling another bond. What's happening in late stage capitalism was forecast centuries ago, in that ultimately it would begin to cannibalize itself. And if you look around, look at the cost of health insurance in the United States. There's absolutely no justification for the cost of health insurance, for the cost of medications, other than the fact that they can. And once industry raises prices for any reason, they never reduce them. They never go back down. That is a process that corporations have learned over the course of centuries of once you get to what they call market threshold, which is how much I, as a consumer, will tolerate to pay for a loaf of bread. Once they've reached that, they won't exceed it for now, but they will never reduce the cost, even if their costs go down. Because since the 1970s, when capitalism pulled a complete 180, and it was explained to corporations that their only responsibility, thank you Milton Friedman, mentioned him many times before, was to their shareholders, not to their customers, everything changed. And now we are being exploited at every turn, at every opportunity. Think about it. Think about all the added costs in your life today. Think about your auto insurance. Why is auto insurance all of a sudden exploded into area? I'm a 60-year-old driver with a relative. I've had one ticket in a decade. I am paying more now for auto insurance than I was when I was 21 and I had a DUI. Explain the logic of that to me, because I cannot figure it out. And the truth is, there's not a logic per se. It's just that the insurance will continue to raise rates through ingenious ways of including our credit reports, including auditing our social media for our behaviors and our mindset. Am I a risk taker or am I placid? Do I move around a lot or do I stay home? All of this is now automated by algorithms that are deciding, not human beings, algorithms are deciding what our costs would be. And they will go till they reach market threshold, which is the point where people just simply can't afford it, so they stop buying it. That puts all of us at risk, because obviously an uninsured motorist piling into your car and sending you to the hospital is a huge fucking problem. Corporations have figured out through numerous manipulations how to basically extract every penny possible out of their customers. And in return, what we've gotten is lower quality, less dependability, and most horrific of all, planned obsolescence. Now, I know you've heard that term before because other podcasters have harped on this over and over and over again. Even Joe Rogan brought this up in a podcast just a few weeks ago. Planned obsolescence. Think about it. You have to replace your iPhone every 2 years. Not because that iPhone would break just accidentally, but because your iPhone is programmed to stop working efficiently after 18 months. The battery doesn't charge as much, it takes longer to charge, it holds less information, the functionality of the phone begins to degrade, on and on and on. That's by design. That's not by accident. The same thing is true for automobiles. Every automobile that's been made in the last 25 years, the minute the odometer turns 100,000 miles, it begins to self-destruct through its own engineering and computer systems. Why? Because the cost to repair your automobile, it becomes so expensive. In your mind, you think, well, fuck it, I'll just get rid of this and get a new one, which was the plan the entire time. When corporations stopped respecting humans as individuals and began to see us purely as dollar signs and units, we're no longer seen by corporations as human beings. We're seen as consumers. Consumers. A term that I absolutely despise, and you should as well. Anytime you're treated as a consumer, it ought to make you furious. Because by labeling us like that, then they no longer have to bring in any morals or ethics in their business model. All they have to worry about is making sure their stock price keeps rising through whatever methods and means they need to use to make that happen. Exploitation is where we're at. That's why rents are out of control. That's why the cost of buying a home has gone up 10 times in 15 years. That's why we've completely forgotten about the Great Recession, about derivatives, about subamalgamations of home loans, etc. All the financial tricks of the trade to keep selling debt over and over and over. That's what we're facing right now as a country. And one of the purposes of this particular post is to make you aware that the war in Iran, the undeclared war in Iran, is highly likely to send all of this over the edge. The tipping point, as Malcolm Gladwell pointed out 20 years ago, inaccurately, I might add, but his point remains. There comes a point in every system where it reaches a tipping point, and once it passes that point, it can no longer return to where it was before, and it begins to decline. It begins to degrade. It begins to decay. It begins to fall apart. And so that's why every time you go to the grocery store and you see the price of eggs has risen yet again, the price of milk, the price of beef, the price of chicken, that's all deliberate. It's to see how much we can tolerate before we just say no more. And a piece of advice: stop buying. Street protests are great visuals. They make great posts for TikTok, Instagram. They make you feel good. You feel like you've actually done something to protest against this broken system that is imploding before our very eyes. But it has literally no effect whatsoever. The only way to affect change in this capitalistic system that we are trapped in is through the dollar. And the control that we have as human beings is to say no and to simply stop buying. Unsubscribe from the streaming services. Do you really need Hulu? Do you really need Paramount? Do you need Netflix, etc.? Evaluate that. Stop leaving your lights off when you go home. Stop buying new cars. Refuse to buy new clothes. Stop consuming anything other than what is essential for your family to survive and to be healthy to the best of our ability. Because that's the only way we're going to affect change in this society, is if we stop playing along with the scheme, the game, the manipulation, the exploitation. That's the only way. That's the only thing that government and corporations react to. Falling share prices brought about by declining revenues. That's the only thing that ever gets their attention, and it has to be consistent. Here's a fun fact for you, if you've stuck this far along through the video, that will really intrigue you. 3%. That is all it takes in any civilization to affect change, is a coordination of 3% of the population. If 3% of the population of the United States of America decided tomorrow they were no longer going to buy new cars, buy new phones, get the newest streaming service, buy the newest purse, etc., etc., etc. Just run on in your mind as far as you would like to go. If 3% of this country said, fuck it, that's enough, no more, and simply stopped buying, that would send shockwaves through the entire system. That is exactly what you as an individual should be doing right now. You should be evaluating your income and looking at what is necessary for your family to survive. Because what is coming in the next 90 to 120 days, 180 days at the most, is going to absolutely blow your mind. See, this excursion into Iran has affected the most crucial aspect of economic stability in the world, and that is energy. One of the things that physics has proven is that energy never goes away. It just transfers from one entity to another. You burn a piece of wood, you create heat. The wood provides the energy for the fire, and the fire produces heat. That energy goes out into the atmosphere where it's reabsorbed and comes back in the form of whatever, rain, snow, wind, etc. The energy never ever goes away. It just has a different purpose. When you interrupt the energy supply for the world, not just for a country, for the entire world, the repercussions are astronomical. And they're impossible for a person like myself, even the most educated economics professors are at a loss to explain what might occur in the next 6 months. They have no fucking idea. And when you add the unknown element of AI disrupting the employment chain, which is yet another form of energy, all bets are off. We are literally entering a new age, a new era, which is literally the wild, wild west. And no one, no matter what they say, no one has any idea of what is going to happen. What is this gonna look like? One thing I can guarantee you is there is no plan. There is no plan at all. None. And if you think there is, you're a fool. And if you think somebody's coming to help you or save you when the shit goes south and the fires start burning and the tornadoes come and the hurricanes hit, you're dead wrong. Because one of the things this administration has so gleefully done is they've cut funding to FEMA so that they could fund ICE. They're not interested in saving you from an emergency. They're interested in putting you in jail for disagreeing with this regime. That is what's really going on. But circling back to the beginning of this post, folks, become aware. Capitalism only works through extraction and exploitation. And we've extracted almost everything that's this planet has to offer. We are destroying our biosphere every day. The world we are leaving for our children, the world that they will inherit, that they will deal with in the decades to come, is nothing like the world that existed just 50 years ago. Our destructive capabilities have gone beyond anyone's wildest imagination. And we have so altered this planet's life cycle, this planet's ability to heal and to grow, that we don't have any idea of what it's going to look like in the future. I know that's a lot for one podcast, and I know there's a lot of you that won't agree with a single fucking word I said. And if that's the case, I don't give a fuck. This is my Unbelievable Reality podcast. I'm Roy Arthur. If you don't agree with me, simple solution, simply don't fucking watch. If you are watching and you made it to the end, please subscribe, comment, give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. Are you getting the message? Because I'm going to keep repeating it until you do.